Alright, hello everyone and welcome to NFL Discussion. I'm your host and NFL enthusiast Doug. In today's episode I'm going to be discussing Monday Night Football, Week 8 of the 2022 NFL season. And on this episode of Monday Night Football, well, it was thought to be that coming off an impressive performance against the Falcons, that Joe Burrow and the Bengals had something going and they would continue that momentum going into this game against the Browns and pick up a win, while the Browns, who were going into this game on a losing streak, well, yeah, I don't think people are expecting the Browns to win this game overall, but instead, this game on Halloween turned into a nightmare for the Bengals as they got absolutely demolished. They got smashed by the Browns. It was not pretty. And before we get into the action of the game, I do want to take a quick second to give a quick shout out to BetUS. And if you don't know what BetUS is, they are an online gambling company that offers sports betting, casino games, and horse racing. And as of October 2020, they're an A-rated sportsbook on sportsbookadvisor.com, if that means anything to you. So if you use my link down in the description, you will receive a 125% sportsbook bonus upon initial deposit. So again, use the link at the bottom of the description. Go check out BetUS. Go play some bets. Yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and get right into the action. Starting with the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow completed 25 of 35 passes for 232 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So Burrow was under pressure early and often in this game, taking 5 sacks and struggling to a humble 6.6 yards per pass attempt. The Bengals would eventually find themselves down 25-0 before Burrow threw 2 touchdown passes. One of them, or the second one, being a T. Higgins, where he just absolutely jumped up and grabbed it in the air. Always fun to see those kind of plays from receivers. So the absence of the electric Jamar Chase certainly was felt and had a clear influence on the productivity of the Bengals offense, although that wasn't the only issue. The offensive line was also a problem again. And the Bengals will need to overcome both of those, with Chase set to miss the next 3 to 4 weeks. The Bengals do host the Panthers in Week 9, so perhaps Burrow will have or be provided with more time in the pocket. So overall in this game, Cincinnati needs to clean up the details. They had on defense. I get that Nick Chubb is great, but you gotta do a better job stopping the run. You gotta play better on defense and also on offense too, man. You can't just, even without your number one guy, you still got Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, so I don't really know why you can't be productive. Alright, well, I guess they can see it, right? The offensive line's gotta clean up the pass protection, and also they gotta improve in the run blocking too. I think that's one of the biggest things too, is your running game is still very much non-existent. Also, too, Joe Burrow's winless streak continues against the Browns. At this point, well, I don't know I don't think Burrow's resume needs to be stated, but for some reason he can't find a way to defeat the Browns, as he is now 0-4 games against the Browns, losing twice in Cleveland with different supporting cast. The last time that he lost was when the Bengals were still working towards contention in his rookie season. This time, after lighting up the scoreboard a week earlier at home, the Bengals were expected to win. Instead, they came out flat and allowed an energetic Browns team to capitalize and then simply push them around. This is probably going to be a point of focus in his career, and since he'll get 2 meetings per year of his interstate rival, it won't be the last that we hear of it. It's like Kirk Cousins on primetime football, pretty much. Cincinnati, however, will want to forget about this game as quickly as possible. As for the Browns, Jacoby Brissett completed 17 of 22 passes for 278 yards and 1 touchdown, adding 12 yards and a touchdown on 6 carries. So the low volume was more than made up for, as Brissett hit Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones for multiple chunk gains. His 5 incompletions included 2 throwaways under pressure, 2 of those incompletions being on deep throws, and then 1 was a drop. His rushing score would come on a broken play on the first possession of the second half, with Brissett demonstrating some escapability and decision-making with a tuck and run following the roll out of the pocket. Brissett has been able to keep the Browns in the divisional hunt as they await the return of Deshaun Watson, as currently nobody is running away with the NFC NFC North. And with this win, they are currently 2 games behind the Ravens in first place. The Browns will head to their bye in Week 9 before traveling to Miami for a date with the Dolphins in Week 10. And coming off a 4-game losing streak, the Browns, they learned how to close out a game. They not only jumped out to a big lead, they maintained the big lead, and they closed out this game with a big win. Also, their defense, which has been coming under some fire in recent weeks, understandably so, their defense had not been playing well. Their defense stepped up in a big way too, so perhaps Joe Woods can save his job and turn this defense around. They have the talent to do it. And one last thing I want to touch on with the Browns offense, and that is the engine of their offense. Nick Chubb, who I would have to say, and I would have to agree with this point, I should say, is that he is the best running back in the league, and with him, the Browns are doing enough to stay in contention. So coming into this game on the 4-game losing streak, the Browns were coming into this game against the Bengals on a 4-game losing streak, and part of the issues they were having was an inability to, some of the issues they were having were an inability to execute on the back end of the defense. That wasn't some of the issues. That was the main issue for the early season misfortunes for the Browns, was again executing on the back end of the defense. Those breakdowns would lead to big plays and easy scores, and then if you compound those issues, the Browns also struggled at the point of attack because they lacked starting caliber defensive tackles. You had Myles Garrett and nobody else on the defensive line. Complementary football is necessary for a team to dig itself out of a hole it created. Different offensive personnel packages ranging from heavier looks to 5 wide sets create uncertainty for opponents, but each look must remain true to the team's identity, which is defined by Chubb running the football. Brissett, followed by Watson, can benefit from this blueprint and also the consistent effectiveness of Nick Chubb. Simple formula, yes, but it's not one that many other teams can recreate. And the simple reason is too, it just depends on who's your running back. When you have a table setter like Nick Chubb, you can follow this formula. But other teams, if you don't have that table setter at running back, you ain't really eating. And with improved health along the offensive line, the defense rounding into form and playing to its potential, and then the eventual inclusion of Watson, who will most likely be rusty coming off his suspension. So I know most people are probably going to overreact if he comes out flat. I won't. I'll give him time to see what he can do. But nonetheless, the Browns, I think coming into this game out with a 2-5 record, now a win at 3-5. It's still entirely possible that they can avoid a lost season, make the postseason, and see what happens against the AFC's best. And also, as I talked about too, no one's run away with the AFC North. Ravens are a good team, but the Browns almost had it beat. So, the Browns, this was the kind of performance that they needed to avoid being written off, to avoid basically kind of staring down the barrel of a lost season before your new franchise quarterback has even played the game for you. So things are looking up for the Browns. Things are looking down for the Bengals. And with that will wrap up this discussion on Monday Night Football. And now, to conclude this episode of NFL Discussion, it is time for my favorite segment of the week. That is the Throwing in the Towel segment. So for those of you who aren't familiar with this segment, basically, after every week of football, I evaluate every team that lost their performance and basically pick one of those teams and throw in the towel on their season. So just to kind of recap, week 1 it was the Jets coming off a loss to the Patriots. Still over 500 though, so good on them. Week 2 it was the Texans, who had a bad loss to a Titans team when Derrick Henry ran over that defense, and they did nothing. They could do nothing about it apparently. Week 3, well, that one has been rescinded or repealed, if you will. It was originally the Seahawks, but it's hard for me to further deny that the Seahawks team are not contenders. I never doubted their offense. I always thought their offense had been good, but it was their defense that I always questioned, and I always thought that with their defense that eventually that things would kind of catch up to them eventually, and that because of how bad their defense was playing, that they wouldn't quite be able to make it into the season, that they would just miss it. But their defense has kind of stepped up recently, so Seahawks are starting to play good. They're a good football team, and I can't really deny it anymore. So I'm gonna go ahead and rescind that decision. So week 3 is just a blank now. Week 4 was the Panthers, and they're coming off a tough loss to the Falcons, where they got screwed over by the rules yet again. Apparently, a flag was thrown on DJ Moore for taking his helmet off, even though it was said by Terry McLaurin that he wasn't on the field, that the flag shouldn't have been thrown. So, once again, dumb rules in the NFL that shouldn't exist, screwing teams over. And yet the NFL doesn't care. Week 5, it was the Steelers coming off a loss to the Eagles, but then again, that's the Eagles. I mean, Pittsburgh is not set up well to match up with a team like that, so they were not going to win that. Week 6, it was the Bears coming off a loss to the Cowboys. That game kind of got away from them. Week 7, it was the Lions coming off a loss to the Dolphins. Their offense started to look like the offense of old, and then the defense kind of imploded, and then the offense got shut down, and then that was the end of it. And this week, it is week 8. And so for my team this week, really there was just one team I had in mind, and that team was the Jacksonville Jaguars. So earlier in the season, the Jaguars appeared to be turning the corner. Back in week 3, they went into Los Angeles and throttled the Chargers after blowing out the Colts in week 2. The Jaguars haven't won since then. Much like the team as a whole, quarterback Trevor Lawrence has regressed badly after a solid start. He was bad against a stout Denver defense, completing 18 of 31 passes for 133 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. The second of those picks ended Jacksonville's comeback bid. Now, in fairness to Lawrence, it's not all his fault that the Jaguars are struggling. Outside of tailback Travis Etienne, there isn't really a facet of the game Jacksonville is playing well with any consistency. Next week, the Jaguars will face a Raiders team that's also been struggling this year. They got blown out by the Saints, and that figures to be their best chance to pick up another win before the Week 11 bye, as they play the Chiefs in Kansas City in Week 10. So that's my team for this week, is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Ultimately, I thought that this team was going to be different this year. I thought with the new head coach and the talent that they have, that they would be able to turn things around, and it looked like they did. It looked like they were going to be at least a competitive football team, if not a good football team. That has all now changed. They are well under 500, only 2 wins, and in an AFC South division that's wide open, the Jaguars had a really good chance at making a run for that division title, but they are now out of the running, and basically now all they can do is just fight off the Texans for 3rd place in the division. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of NFL Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button down below.